Hi. Today I want to share with you the six fastest ways to find more cash, or I could say hidden cash, in your business. As an added bonus, the strategies I'm going to share with you are little or no cost strategies. Now, as a business coach, one of the challenges I have is that I'm selling the invisible, something that some business owners find intangible. Now, I can say with confidence to any business owner they can have a better life, they can make more money, they can have a lot more fun, they can work less hours, or I can guarantee there's way more profit in their business and together we'll find it. But what I found is that some people need just a little bit more proof. So I had the idea of creating something that made the intangible a lot more tangible. Now, if you no doubt know, there are a number of levers that you can pull in any business to uncover hidden cash. And my plan was to create a tool around those levers. And one day I was having a catch up with my own business coach, Nathan, and Nathan lives in Brisbane, Australia. And I mentioned to him that what I was working on. And he said to me, save your time, Kev, save your money. I know a guy that's got exactly what you're looking for. And he introduced me to Brad Flynn, who's also a business coach from Brisbane. And Brad has created a piece of software that saved me from having to reinvent the wheel. Because this software can demonstrate the results I get with my clients, making them a lot more tangible, and it can be shown in real time. And the tool itself revolves around 17 profit and cash generating strategies. And you might be thinking, 17? Do I need to implement all 17? No. And some of the strategies might not be relevant to every business anyway. And today I'm going to focus on and share just six of those strategies. Strategies that are easy to implement into your business. And as you'll see, they can have an incredible impact on your bottom line. In actual fact, the average amount of extra cash that I find for businesses using this tool is a tad over £80,000. Now, before I get into the actual presentation, let me just introduce myself. So, who the heck am I? Now, as I said, I'm a business coach, and I have been for the last 17 years. Now, prior to opening my own business coaching practice, I had an 8-year spell in the Royal Navy before becoming a business owner in the hospitality industry, where I had 6 bars, 4 restaurants, and 2 hotels. Which all sounds great, doesn't it? But it wasn't, because the way I was going about doing this thing called business made it blinking hard work, particularly in that first decade. And because of my lack of knowledge on how to really run a business, I paid what I call a lot of stupid tax. And stupid tax is the price we pay in business for the mistakes we make. One of the biggest mistakes was not understanding that the language of business is actually numbers. But once I got my head around that fact, it transformed the way I did business and therefore the results I was able to achieve. And with a few small tweaks, it can be the same for you as well. Right, before we get into the case study, I just want you to ponder a question. What I want you to consider is, how would you finish off that sentence? Money is. Now, there's lots of ways you might end it. It could be money is tight, or other people have it but not me, or it's hard to make. Whatever those statements are for you, you would really benefit from flushing them out. Because if your business is not producing the kind of profits or the kind of cash flow that you would want it to, the first place to look for what's causing that issue is the person staring back at you in the mirror. Because any form of limiting belief that you have around money is going to get in the way of you taking the actions and implementing the strategies that will grow your profit and grow your cash. You're likely to self-sabotage yourself so that you can stay true to those beliefs. So, I would definitely recommend you invest some time sitting and pondering this question and writing down and capturing the thoughts you have when it comes to finishing off that sentence. Now, some of you may remember back in the day that on the top of tills in the UK and pubs, there was a lighting gadget, and its job was to reveal fake money. And what would happen is that if you handed a member of staff a banknote, they would hold it under the light so they could see through the note. And the holographic strip, if that was missing, they knew it was a fake note. It's the same thing here. When you capture your finishes to that sentence, you can then hold them up to the light, you'll be able to see right through them. realize that they're not facts. They're just fake ideas, they're assumptions, they're stories that you've gathered along the way while you were growing up. But those ideas, those assumptions will get in the way of you implementing the strategies that I share with you here today. The truth is, money is a means of exchange of value. Naturally, I'm thinking on, I probably had the word fair in there. It means for the fair exchange of value, changing in real time. Now, here's the thing: who determines value? It's the customer. They make that determination, not you. And you need to keep that in mind. And here's another slant on what money is: an idea backed by confidence. Now, I'm going to give you ideas that I 100% guarantee will make you more money. But if you haven't got the confidence to apply them, then they're not going to make you a single penny. Now, I mentioned earlier that the language of business is numbers. Now, if you haven't got confidence around the numbers in your business and the story those numbers are telling you, you may hold back on implementing some of these ideas. And confidence just means that you've got trust or faith in yourself. And if you don't understand the numbers, it's unlikely that you're going to have the trust or the faith to take the leap into implementation. Right, let's get into this case study. Now, what I've done is I've changed the names to protect the innocent, but the numbers are 100% true. Now, I just want to show you the effect that implementing these strategies can have on any business. And Pete is the owner of PTA Plumbers, and he's been at his plumbing business for 7 years. And when I met him, he had a couple of, I suppose you could say, headline complaints. First, he was working way too many hours. Secondly, he wasn't getting the rewards for all the hard work that he was putting in terms of profit. Now, something to notice here are the percentages of profit. So his gross profit margin was 53%, which sounds good, and his net profit margin is 8%. And you have to watch out because, as I've said, 53% sounds good, and 8% could be considered to be good in some sectors. But here's the thing, and this is really, really important: it's good compared to what? What are you contrasting your numbers with? Now, back in the day, when I had what I suppose you would call one of my Homer Simpson moments, a real dough moment. When I got my hands on my first restaurant, it was in dire state. It was in a real dire state. As a result of that, its bottom line profit was just a little around that 2% mark. And within a short space of time, I'd managed to get my bottom line up to 6%. I'd tripled the profits. And I thought I was a bit of a rock star, woo, I've tripled the profits, therefore I'm a rock star. But how wrong was I? Because I was comparing my restaurant's new performance to its once dire performance. And what I found out was, and I urge everybody to go and do the same thing, is to research the average margins in your industry. Now, someone or somewhere out there will have that information. It might be your accountant, it might be a trade body you need to speak to. What I discovered was the average net profit margin in restaurants in the UK at that time was 12%. And the reason it was 12% and not higher was because of businesses like mine that were dragging the average figure down. It also meant there had to be businesses with profit margins that were north of that figure. And at the time, McDonald's, for instance, had a bottom line margin of around 22%. Now, my restaurant was a totally different service model to McDonald's, but I still made the decision that we were going to have a goal of getting our profit margins as close as possible to 20%. Now, here's the thing, and this is worth jotting down, by the way. It's not what a goal is, it's what a goal does. I'll say that again. It's not what a goal is, it's what a goal does. Let me explain why. We didn't hit the goal of 20%. We wanted to, that was the goal. But because we set out to achieve 20%, we managed to achieve just over 18%. So we actually failed on the goal, and we could beat ourselves up for that, but we increased our profit by over 800%. That's not too shabby, is it? It's not what the goal is, it's what the goal does. Okay, let's get back into this case study and what can happen when we apply some simple strategies into this business. And these are strategies that can be applied into any business. And the first one is margins. Now, something I see all the time in a lot of businesses is people not understanding the difference between markup and margin. You really do need to be able to distinguish between them because they're definitely not the same. Typically, if I was to ask a business owner how they price their products or their service, they'll tell me they mark it up by X%. So I say, great, what's your margin then? And 99.9% of the time, they'll say to me, well, I've just told you. I said, no, what you just told me is what you mark things up. I asked you what your margin is. And they look at me like I'm a bit stupid. Now, what I will then do is draw out a concept I'm about to show you on a slide. So that they're able to understand the distinction. So let's say you've got a product business and we buy some stock that we're going to turn into something a bit different. So let's say, for instance, in my restaurant, let's keep things simple. I buy some ingredients and I turn them into, should we say, a sandwich. Now, for those in a service business, you may be thinking, well, that doesn't apply to me, does it? Well, it does. Your stock is time and people. Now, in this example, the stock costs £100 and the owner decides to mark it up by £50 and sell it at £150. And the owner's really happy with that. But let's check just what the owner's done here. They've taken something that costs £100, they've marked it up by 50 or 50%. Now, they think their margin is 50%, but it's not. Margin is just a fancy word for what we get to keep. I'll repeat that. Margin is just a fancy word for what we get to keep. Now, we don't get to keep it all in our pocket, but we do get to keep it in our business to pay our bills. And here's how you calculate margin. So it's 50 out of 150. So it's only 33%. Now, some of you may be scrambling for your calculators here. If, like me, you just had a realization that your margins are a lot less than you actually thought they were. Now, in this instance, they're 34% less. This becomes really important when we think about the next concept, which is the 80-20 principle, which states that 20% of our actions give us 80% of our results. And in business, that looks a bit like 20% of your products and services will give you 80% of your profit. 20% of your customers will give you 80% of your headaches. 20% of your customers will give you 80% of your margin. You've got to know where your sweet spots are. So you need to do some research to find out what's what in your business. Now, there's a quote, no margin, no mission. And it came from a nun of all people, Sister Irene Krauss. And she was a fundraiser, so she understood this principle. So you've got to know and you've got to understand your margins because not knowing them will cost you a lot more than you think. The next strategy is to stop discounting. So don't be like Nike and just do it. Instead, just don't do it. Now, if you're a bit old like me, you might remember a TV program called Lost in Space. There was a robot that was constantly warning of the danger to the Robinson family, in particular Will Robinson. And we need a robot in our business sometimes to warn us the dangers of discounting. So let's just stick with our original example, where we're buying something for £100 and we're selling it for £150. Now, let's say someone was to say to you, yeah, I'll buy your stuff if you give me a 10% discount. Now, you might think to yourself, yeah, okay, it's only 10%, I'm making 50%. But here's the problem. The discount is coming off of your margin. And as a result of that, what you're actually doing is you're reducing your margin by 30%. Can you see the danger? Now, conversely, if you were brave enough and you were to put your prices up by just 10%, you would increase your margin by 30%. which leads nicely into the next strategy. Increase your prices. And the reason you want to put them up is because, well, you're worth it. Now, there's a great book, and I do recommend you find a place on your reading list for it. And the book is Influence by Robert Cialdini. Now, in the book, one of the stories he tells of a small seaside shop where they sell trinkets and such things. And one night, as the owners go and close up the shop, he puts down instructions for the person who's on the morning shift to put some of the rings they were selling, or they haven't been selling, on special offers and discount them, and able to reduce the price from $9 to $4.50. And the next time the owner was in the store, all the rings had been sold. And they said to themselves, well, that's great. I knew dropping the price would get them off the shelf. But it came to light that the employee had misread the instructions. And instead of dropping the price to $4.50, they put the price up to $45. But the rings sold. And the reason they sold is because the shoppers thought they were expensive so they must be good. So perception is reality. So putting your prices up is an absolute must, particularly if you haven't done it for some time. And you don't have to go to the extremes of this example, and you can just buy a small amount, put your teeth in, and you'll be able to see the effects of that shortly. Now, a key point here, normally the person that has the biggest hang-up about price is you, the business owner. And I know that from my own experience. But another huge benefit of putting your prices up is it will filter out your D-grade customers. And D-grade customers are the people I mentioned before, the 20% of your customers that are giving you 20% of your headaches. The people who bitch and moan about everything and are always looking for some form of discount. And there's a strong possibility that if you were to dig into the numbers associated with these particular customers, you're not making any profit from them anyway. And that should be a really great incentive for you to put your prices up. It's also important to have a really good and well-documented sales process in your business, alongside some well-written, tried and tested scripts. And you've got to be clear on what your value proposition is and be able to communicate that proposition to your prospects throughout your process. The process also needs to have the right measurements in place, and also understand that the 80-20 rule also applies here as well. Because 80% of your sales are made on your 5th to 12th point of contact. And I'm going to go through that in a little bit more detail shortly. Now, strategy number 4 is to reduce your cost of sale and fixed expenses. Now, there's lots of things you can do here. And with my clients, I use a tool called the Profit Maximizer Rate Matrix, which is based around 2 vital questions that you can ask against every single one of your expenses. The gains from doing this exercise are truly remarkable, honestly. And one strategy that I do recommend everybody implements when they're working with me, or they're working with a supplier, or they could be a landlord, is they need to go out there and make sure they've got a win-win relationship. All too often you find that it isn't. And you need to be asking for a better price. Now, a great book on how to do this is The Barefoot Investor by Scott Pape. And in that book, he's got some really good scripting on what exactly to say and how you can position it. Now, I remember one of my clients, Mike, he had a huge win from doing this exercise because within 1 week and just 3 phone calls, he put over £15,000 back on his bottom line just by asking. And in truth, most of these people don't want to lose your custom, and therefore they're likely to be open to negotiation. And all you need to do is pluck up the courage to ask. So make sure you're asking for a better price from your suppliers, from your landlords on a regular basis. Strategy number 5 is to follow up. Are you keeping in touch with people? What's your follow-up system? Do you have one? A lot of businesses don't. Now, I mentioned before that 80% of sales are made between the 5th and the 12th point of contact. So take a look at the information from an image on an old postcard that I stumbled across. I just want you to consider, as I'm showing you this, in your business, at what stage are you giving up on following up? Because 48% of salespeople never follow up with a prospect. I'm sure you agree that's absolutely crazy. 25% of salespeople make a second contact and then they stop. Only 12% of salespeople make a third contact. 10% follow up more than 3 times. What made those numbers even more frightening are these next set of statistics. Only 2% of sales are made on the first contact. So the likelihood of you getting a sale on first contact is really small. 3% of sales are made on the second contact. 5 are made on the third contact. 10% of sales are made on the fourth contact. And as I've already said, 80% of sales are made on the 5th to 12th contact. The longer you stay in the game, the easier it is for you to make the sale. You've got a lot less competition. So having a process in place for keeping in regular contact is really, really important. Strategy number 6 is getting some help so that you're not doing all that stupid stuff like I did. Now let's just say this. If you haven't got an assistant, you are the assistant. Just let that sink in. I'll say it again. If you haven't got an assistant, you are the assistant. If you haven't got a marketer, you are the marketer. If you haven't got a salesperson, you are the salesperson. If you haven't got a cleaner, you are the cleaner. If you haven't got someone to open the emails, you are the email opener. If you haven't got someone to do the numbers, you are the number cruncher, etc., etc., etc. The big question is, why do business owners do this? Why do they prioritize working in the business over working on the business? And mostly it's done to save money. But saving a wage is almost certainly costing you a fortune. I'm saying almost, but actually I'm going to replace that with definitely. Saving a wage is definitely costing you a fortune. Because as a business owner, one thing that can really run away from you is time. And time, and when it comes to time, it all comes down to how we manage ourselves. It's not time management, it's managing ourselves. It's self-management. In my coaching session with clients, there are some excuses that are banned. There's a list of excuses actually that we ban. And one of them is, I haven't got time. Now, if you're one of those people that want to get in control of your time, the first thing you need to do is to keep a diary of where your time is going now. Just track your time. So and that exercise alone will help you hone in on areas where you might be doing some really stupid stuff. The second thing I suggest you do then is list out all the activities that you're doing and map them across a fun skills matrix to discover which tasks you can either delegate, dump, or recruit someone to do. The conundrum here is very few people in business have learned the gentle art of recruitment. And that is another very, very costly mistake. And yes, I'm definitely guilty of that one, which means, and Christ knows how much stupid tax I've paid on that one. So you want to be freeing up your time to produce better results. Here's the thing to think about. If you're not working on your business, who is? If you're not working on your business, who is? And how much is that costing you? So there you are, 6 strategies that you can use to find hidden cash. Now what I want to do is I want to bring this all together and show you the effect this had on Pete's plumbing business. So we looked at things like how much could he increase his prices. Well, Pete said that his market was really price conscious. He thought he might be able to get a 5% increase without too many challenges. Now, in terms of reducing costs, he thought he'd be able to achieve at least a 2% decrease in his cost. In his cost of sale, and possibly renegotiate on his rent, because he hadn't done that in years, and get a 5% decrease. Now, those 3 small changes resulted in £53,500 extra profit. That's a 100% increase in his profit of 3 little tweaks. In actual fact, not going to show you in this demonstration, but he actually continued to put his prices up, and he got his price up. I think his price was about 15% over what they were now at this time. Other thing we did is look at how many jobs he was discounting, and what was the average discount. which turned out to be the figure of 10%, the go-to figure, should I say, of 10%. Next, we looked at his sales breakdown and how much of his sales were down to his highest margin service that produced a 6% margin, and discovered that only 30% of his total sales were coming from that 6% margin service. So he predicted that if he placed a bigger focus and marketed this service more, he can increase the sales of this high margin service by about 20%. In terms of marketing, he was doing like so many other businesses do, and he wasn't sure how much of his marketing was working. So there's a guy called John Wanamaker made a quote years ago, didn't he? 50% of our marketing isn't working. We just don't know which 50%. But he thought he was probably wasting about £2,500 per year on marketing. And when we looked at his follow-up, which was a big hit and a bit miss, he thought that by improving his follow-up process, he'd be able to get at least 20% extra in sales. Then we looked at any work that could be rebooked. For instance, things like the next boiler service. Get it in the diary. And then we switched to something called maximum utilisation, which is how much could he push through his fixed expenses or his overheads without having to raise his costs. And also, how much did he think he was giving away on jobs? The little extras, the little extra screw here, the little bracket here, the washer here, the little bit of extra pipe there. He also set himself a target of getting a 10% reduction in his rent. And he didn't have any loans in place, so there was no need to do any form of refinancing. And interest payments can be huge, a huge drain for a lot of businesses. But he did have some old equipment that he could sell off for £1,000. And then we looked at how much time was being spent travelling that wasn't being charged for. That was a big BFO for him, another Homer moment. And we also looked at jobs that he could charge a premium for, let's say emergency jobs. Then we looked at what that might be costing him by saving a wage. What extra money could be generated if he freed up his time to focus on higher value tasks in his business? Now, as a result of all those adjustments, the 5% increase would result in nearly £33,000 in extra cash. That's £2,723 per month. If he stopped discounting, he could make an extra £7,000 extra profit. Renegotiating with his supplier to reduce the cost of sale would get him an extra £6,274. A reduction in his fixed cost or overheads would give him back £14,516. Now, if he placed a higher focus on higher margin services, he would find £23,500 or nearly £2,000 a month. And if he stopped his ineffective advertising, he'd save himself over £7,000 a year. As you can see, a huge over £69,000 could be had by improving his follow-up process and staying in the game a little bit longer. By suggesting that customers pre-book their next service, he could gain £34,638 in extra sales. If we got the business to closer to maximum utilisation by upping the productivity, we could gain over £60,000 or £5,000 per month. And if we charge for everything on the job, we'd make an extra £1,000 a year. If we renegotiate his rent and he sell off any old stock, he could make £2,100 extra per year. Now, there's a huge £35,616 to be had by being a bit cleverer around charging for travel. And there's a gain to be had also from having some form of charge out rate and freeing up some of his time to focus on high value tasks by getting an assistant in. So he was paying a wage and it was gaining him a fortune. It would give him a gain of £13,500. As you can see, all this resulted in a possible of £316,411 per year gain, or an extra £23,367 per month. Pretty impressive, eh? Now, I'm sure you agree that's quite a result, and you might be thinking you couldn't do that in your business. You might not even want to have that type of growth in your business. But wouldn't it be nice to know that the money is available to you if you want it? So what difference would it make to you in your business if you were able to make a lot more profit? And if making more profit is of interest to you, and why wouldn't it be, if you'd like to discover just how much money you might be leaving on the table, grab yourself a free Zoom call with me. It's going to take about 45 minutes, and I guarantee that on that call, together, we're going to find at least £25,000 of extra cash in your business. My run rate for these calls is presently running at a tad over £80,000 per business. But I absolutely guarantee to find a minimum of £25,000 of extra cash in your business. And you'll get to see the report showing the strategies you need to implement to release that cash. And so there's other strategies that I didn't cover in this video. So book yourself a session now. The link will be somewhere in and around this video. I'm really looking forward to meeting you and you make a lot more profit. Thanks for watching.